School Live. Thank you so much again for joining us here. We really appreciate your support and for tuning in. Today we do have some artwork. This here is from Kenny in Clifton Forge, Virginia. And Kenny, we just want to say that we absolutely adore this lovely drawing of a wood turtle. And it is very good timing because today we're going to be meeting a wood turtle. So today we're learning a little bit about locomotion, which was our theme this week. And we wanted to end our week with a very special friend, a turtle, one of my faves. And we are going to bring her out. She is a wood turtle. Her name is Woody, and we're going to show you guys her locomotion. And for her, she is pretty awesome because she is able to swim and walk on land. So she has some pretty important skills that help her do that. So we actually have a little pool for her here, and we'll see if she's interested in maybe showing us a little bit of that swimming today. Now, Woody is a wood turtle. So wood turtles are native to basically the northeastern coast of the United States and a little bit into southeastern Canada. So they stretch all the way from the very bottom right-hand corner of Canada all the way down into about Virginia. So these guys are native to North America. You can't find them anywhere else. So if you live in this area, it's pretty awesome if you spot one of these guys in the wild. And so where she's from is she's native to forested areas. She's gonna live in places that are covered in forest and where there's lots of water. So we call those riparian habitats. And those are places where there's gonna be a creek or a river, and our friend Woody, the wood turtle, is gonna take full advantage of that kind of habitat where there's wetlands as well as lots of tree canopy and cover. Now, Woody is specifically designed to be an amazing swimmer and pretty great at walking on land. So hopefully she's moving around a little bit, which is great. And I'm sure she starts to acclimate to her little playpen here. We'll see her move around even more. Now, being a wood turtle, right, she does have some of those same things that other turtles have, right? She has this hard shell on her body, and it is completely connected to her, right? So when we talk about turtles, we're talking about these guys that have a backbone, right, because they're vertebrates, and their shell is actually attached to their backbone. So if you take a look at kind of this ridge that's right in the middle of her back here, that's actually where her spine is on the opposite side of her shell, right? So she has that shell that's gonna help keep her safe. When predators come around, she's gonna be able to tuck her arms and legs in, and she's gonna be able to tuck her head in as well. So that's one of these qualities that all turtles have, right? They have those nice hard shells to keep them nice and safe. Now, for Woody, if you notice, she actually has a pretty flat shell. And for her, that's gonna help her be much quicker in the water. So she's a pretty speedy swimmer, and having that flatter shell is gonna allow her to speed around really quickly and help her move around and be able to catch things that might be swimming in the water also. So for Woody here, she is an omnivore. And for her, that means that she's going to eat all kinds of bugs and also a whole bunch of fruits and veggies. So for her, she's gonna be swimming around. She might even eat some small fish. She might eat tadpoles. She's gonna eat anything that she finds in a creek or river that she's gonna be able to swim around in and help. It's gonna help feed her, right? So she's gonna be able to hunt for that prey, and that flat shell is gonna help her move through the water really speedily, which is pretty cool. Now, if you take a look, one of her most noticeable features is actually her bright coloration. So that's one of the ways that we know that she's a wood turtle. And if you find a turtle in the wild and you're curious as to what kind it is, if they do have a bright orangey or bright yellow kind of neck and in between their arm areas, that's how you know that it might just be a wood turtle, which is pretty exciting. Now these guys, they live on land and in the water about 50-50% of the time. So like these guys will spend a lot of their time in the water and they'll spend a lot of their time on the land, which is pretty cool. So she's gonna be on land foraging for snacks, things like maybe some some plant material, maybe even some fruits if she finds any. And in the water, she's going to be searching for a lot of those fish and tadpoles and other small moving animals. Now, another really cool thing that Woody does is she is going to, when she gets on land, one of her favorite foods are actually worms. And what she's going to do is she's going to crawl up onto the bank and she's going to stomp her feet. And when she stomps her feet, studies have actually shown that the worms will come up to the surface because they think it might be raining. So they'll come up to the surface, and that's when Woody will snack on some of those worms that come up to the surface. So you guys can try stomping your feet at home too and see if any worms come up for you. Just maybe don't eat them like Woody might. So Woody here, she is actually an endangered species. So for Woody here, she is going to be, she's protected in certain states here in the Northeast. And for Woody, it's really important that we know a little bit about her. So she's listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List. So if you guys are curious about some of your favorite animals at home and you're wondering if they're endangered, that's a great spot to go. If you look up IUCN Red List, it's this online resource for you guys to check out some of your favorite species and to see how they're doing in the wild, what their populations are like. So unfortunately for wood turtles, they are an endangered species, and they're endangered mostly because of habitat loss. So that means whether trees have been cut down or creeks have been rerouted, or maybe they built houses next to a river. So all those things lead to habitat loss, which means that our friend Woody can't live there at the same time. So a lot of wood turtles in Northeast United States are unfortunately endangered, and they are a protected species. So it's also really important that if you see a cool turtle, that you can check him out, explore him, try to figure out what kind of turtle he is, but just make sure you don't take him home, right? Because although turtles are very cool, right, it's really important that we leave wild animals in the wild, and that we make sure we're not taking them home as pets. And it looks like she's going to explore the land a little bit here too, which is pretty awesome. So you guys got to see her moving around a little bit. She is pretty awesome. She has specialized feet that help her swim around. So for Woody here, she has feet that, especially her front feet, kind of help her walk around, and her back feet here, they're kind of, if you can see, they're pretty wide and they almost have somewhat of a webbed toe, and that allows them to swim even better. Whereas something like a tortoise, right, an animal that's not going to be swimming very often, tortoises are landlocked, so they like to live only on the land. So for them, their feet are large and wide, kind of like an elephant's feet, and they're meant for stomping around and walking. They're not really meant for swimming. So that's a great way to observe some animals to see if maybe you think they would be good swimmers, is not by tossing them into a pond, right, but by maybe taking a look at their feet. You might be able to tell if they're good swimmers just by looking at the way that they move and the way that their feet are, which is pretty exciting. So we actually have a little snack for our friend Woody here, so we'll see if she's interested in one. Have a little cricket friend. See if she wants to eat any. So remember, turtles don't have any teeth. They just have a beak, so you can see that Woody is going to use that beak to help chomp down on her food. So we'll see if she's interested in another one. Oh, she missed. Oh, there she goes. So you can see she's using that beak of hers to chomp around and help her eat. Now that bright orange color that she has helps her camouflage with her surroundings. So for these guys, they're going to be able to help camouflage in the Northeast, because think about it, if you live in Pennsylvania or Virginia or maybe New York, if you guys go outside, particularly in the fall time, you know, if you go into a forest, which is where these guys are going to be from, on the ground, if you look around, you might see a lot of browns and oranges, because we live where there's lots of deciduous forests, which means that when the seasons change, especially in the fall time, right, all those leaves are going to fall off of those trees, and she's going to be able to camouflage or blend in with those leaves, which is pretty exciting. She's pretty good at eating. Eating is definitely one of Woody's favorite hobbies. All right, guys, so we'll get started with a few of your questions. Again, guys, thanks so much for tuning in today. It looks like Liam and Ronan want to know, how big do they grow? Oh, great question. So Woody is actually pretty small for her size, for her species. These guys can be about a foot long. So, take a ruler, right? 12 inches kind of from one side of her tail to all the way up to her face. So they get pretty large. But Woody here, she's probably full grown. She is about 12 years old right now. So we think that she's about fully grown, but these guys can live to be 60. So she might have a little more growing left in her. All right, so Lily would like to know, why do some turtles grow so big and some are small? That's a great question, Lily. So it kind of depends on the habitat that they're in. And some turtles can definitely live a really long time. So some, like, if we look at snapping turtles, some of those turtles can live to be over 100 years old. So they just spend 100 years just growing. And they live on the bottoms of creeks, so they can get pretty big. Woody is meant to be super speedy and super quick. So this here's Woody the wood turtle. So for her, she's not gonna stay super big. She's gonna be smaller because she's built for speed, right? Whereas a snapping turtle will sit on the bottom and they just open their mouth and they wait for something to kind of swim by and then they snag it. But for Woody here, she's gonna be actively searching and hunting for her food. So it's more helpful for her to be a little bit smaller. Ooh, Alex wants to know, can she breathe underwater? Great question, Alex. So she cannot breathe underwater necessarily. She does breathe air like we do. So just like you guys take a deep breath, right? You can feel your lungs expand. That's how we breathe. And so she's gonna breathe very similar to that. She's got 2 nostrils. She just dunked in the water. But she has 2 nostrils that she's gonna breathe through. So she does breathe air. But one of the really cool things about these guys is that they, all winter long, what they'll do, instead of hanging out, because they're reptiles, right? So that means in the wintertime, if she just hung out, she would get really chilly. So what she does is she will swim in the creek. She'll swim down to the bottom of the creek. She's gonna dig her way into the mud, and then she's gonna sit there and she's gonna hibernate for months. And she's gonna hang out under the mud for that whole time. And she's not gonna eat anything. She's not gonna drink anything. And she's gonna be breathing by just absorbing kind of the oxygen that's around her. So she's gonna slow her whole body down and kind of go to sleep for those winter months. And then she'll wake up in the spring and she'll be roaming around looking for more snacks. And Alex wants to know, how long can they stay underwater? Ooh, good question, Alex. You know what? I'm not sure if there's an exact number for wood turtles. You might want to look that up at home and see if you can find a good answer. But I would say definitely for a few minutes they can hang out underwater, which is pretty exciting. All right, so Isabel wants to know, does water, get inside the shell? Great question, Isabel. So water is not gonna be able to get inside of the shell, so I'm gonna let Woody munch on this cricket real quick and then and then I'll be able to show you. But her shell is attached to her body, so her skin is attached to her shell. So she's not able to, there's no water that gets inside of her shell because she's totally watertight. She's all connected. All right, Sydney, can animals break their shell? Yes, Sydney, animals can definitely break their shell. So for our friend Woody here, unfortunately, a lot of wood turtles in the wild actually get hit by cars, which could break their shell. And some birds of prey, like hawks, are really good at figuring out ways to kind of crack open turtle shells, because hawks do like to eat turtles. Mikey and Amelia want to know, what are their predators? Oh, perfect question. So in the wild, Woody is going to have predators like raccoons or maybe opossums or hawks and other large birds of prey. So they are going, they're going to be eating, finding ways to eat turtles, but mostly raccoons and cars are one of their major predators, right? Because these guys aren't really fast enough to run away from cars. Mandy wants to know, how long can they live? Great question, Mandy. So these guys can actually live to be 60 years old, which is pretty awesome. So they're gonna live a pretty long time to be about 60. All right. And Lily wants to know, how can you tell a girl turtle from a boy turtle? Good question, Lily. So it depends on the kind of turtle. But for our wood turtle friends, you can kind of tell by their tail and by their belly. So for wood turtles, the boy turtles have longer, larger tails, and the girl turtles are going to have a little bit of a shorter tail, as well as for girl turtles, their belly is totally flat, whereas the boy turtles, theirs is a little bit curved, kind of like an upside down bowl. Luke and Gray want to know, how much does she weigh? Great question. She weighs about 1.5 pounds. So she weighs, about 1.5 pounds. And which is pretty, and these guys can weigh, I think, upwards of like 2 to 3 pounds. Emma wants to know, why does she have such long claws? Great question, Emma. So you can see that we're actually giving her a few bugs right now, and that's because in the wild, she's gonna use those claws to help her dig up worms and bugs and crickets and all kinds of yummy stuff. All right, so Wolfie wants to know, what is her shell made of? Oh, and Amelia wants to know, what does she feel like? That's a great question. So you can kind of tell she is a little bit kind of bumpy, but her shell is very hard. And that's because her shell's made out of bone. Remember, it's all attached to her body, so her shell's made out of bone. But bone's normally like a white color, right? So if you look at her and her back, you can see it's kind of this brownish black color. And that's because for these guys, their bony shell's covered in these plates. And those plates, we call them scutes, and they're kind of like scales. And those scutes are made out of something called keratin. Now I want you guys at home to feel your fingernails, because that is what keratin is. Your fingernails and your hair, but your fingernails are made up out of something called keratin. And that's kind of what our friend Woody's gonna feel like. She's kind of like a bumpy fingernail. Ben wants to know, can she go all the way inside her shell? So she's gonna be able to pull in most of her limbs inside her shell, and she's gonna be able to hide in there. The only thing she can't do is she can't fully close up her shell. So whereas a box turtle is going to be able to close up their shell almost entirely, our friend Woody here, she's not able to close her shell. She's just able to poke all her head and all of her limbs inside. All right, so Maeve wants to know, how much do they eat? Oh, great question. So Woody actually eats a salad every single day. So she's a pretty healthy eater. So she eats a big old salad with all kinds of lettuce and fruits and veggies on it. And then a few days a week, she gets bugs. And that helps her make sure that she gets a full, well-balanced diet. So she eats about a small salad every day and probably about 10 to 15 crickets every few days. And Andrew wants to know, how many eggs do they lay and where do they lay them? Great question, Andrew. So wood turtles can lay anywhere from 3 to 18 eggs, and they're only going to do that about once a year. And where they'll lay them is they'll probably lay them on creek sides, right? They're going to crawl out, they're going to find a muddy area, somewhere that it's easy for her to dig. She's going to use her back legs to dig a great big hole, and then she's going to deposit her eggs, anywhere from 3 to 18 of them, inside of that hole. And then she's going to cover it up, and it's going to look like nothing was ever there. And then that way, that helps her hide her eggs from predators, things like raccoons that might actually want to eat those eggs. All right, Abby wants to know, why is it when you turn a turtle around, they go back around where they're going? That's a great question. So turtles are so good at knowing exactly where they are and exactly where they're going. It's like they have an inside map in their head where they know where they are. So turtles are really, really smart at figuring out where they want to go and where they are. So whether it's, nobody really knows exactly how they're able to figure it out, but some turtles they inherently know, which means they're just kind of born with that knowledge of where to go and how to figure it out. So no matter where you try to turn them, they already have that map in their head. It's kind of like a GPS system, right? And they already know exactly where they're headed. All right, guys, so let's see. Oh yeah, so we do have some cool things that we wanted to show you guys. We have some things that we call biofacts here. So to give you a little bit of an idea, this might help our friends who are interested to learn more about their shells. So this This is a snapping turtle shell. So can you guys see the size difference between Woody, the wood turtle, and this snapping turtle shell? You can see that the snapping turtle shell is much larger. So Woody, she's a little bit different, right? So she's not a snapping turtle. She's not gonna live quite as long, and she's not gonna get nearly as big. And she's kind of more of an orangey kind of color. But this snapping turtle shell is much larger, and we can tell it's a snapping turtle because it's a little more jagged on the bottom. It's a little more pointy. But you can see that this has those scoots, right? Those scoots on top here. But if you look at the inside, you can check out those bones, right? So this is the backbone of what have been this snapping turtle shell. Now, I didn't know this snapping turtle. This was actually donated to us. And we thought it was a really cool educational tool for you guys to be able to see some of those, that inside, that backbone, right? So this is what the inside of Woody's shell is gonna look like, which is pretty awesome. So that's our snapping turtle shell. And then to give you guys another idea, this here is another turtle skeleton that we have. And if you take a look, you can see the same kind of thing. So this is what the inside bones are gonna look like, right? So they have bones in their body just like we do, right? So if you guys reach back, you can probably feel your backbone, right? It's kind of the bony thing in the middle of your back. And that's what our turtles are gonna have too, right? They have that backbone, which is pretty awesome. And then here's what that shell would look like without those scoots, right? Without those bony, those plates. All right, so Brayden wants to know, does she play with toys? Oh, great question. So she sometimes does. We give her lots of scent enrichment here at the zoo, which means that there's all kinds of things for her to smell. And then we will give her toys occasionally. She really loves boxes. We give her cardboard boxes, and that's one of her favorite things to play with, is to hide in cardboard boxes. It's kind of like a fort for her. All right, so Henry wants to know, what's the difference between turtles and tortoises? Okay, great question. So for these guys, we can tell that they are turtles because they are going to eat a variety of foods. They're going to be omnivores, so they're going to eat both meat, which for them is bugs and insects, and they're also going to eat fruits and veggies, whereas a tortoise is typically, they're strictly herbivores, which means they're mostly just going to eat plants like grasses and things like that. Our turtle friend here is also mostly aquatic or semi-aquatic, which means they're really good at swimming, right? Our friend Woody here, she's showing us how great she is at moving around in the water. So they're going to be swimming, and they're going to maybe have some webbed feet or have specially designed limbs to help them move around in the water. A tortoise, on the other hand, is unfortunately definitely going to be more land-bound. So they're only going to live on land for these guys. All right, guys. So don't forget to check out. We're going to be posting today's activity. Okay, which is that? So you guys will be able to see what the difference is for today's between turtles and tortoises. So that'll help you out with today's activity, which is pretty exciting. And thanks so much for joining us here today and learning about locomotion this week. Next week we're going to be learning all about habitats. So we're going to meet a whole bunch of really amazing animals next week. And don't forget, we're going to be releasing some nature play this weekend. So stay tuned for some videos and some activities for you guys to do at home. And thanks for tuning in and checking us out here at Elmwood Park Zoo with our friend Woody the Wood Turtle. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Don't forget, if you want to support us, keep on watching or like and subscribe. And if you are able to, you're always welcome to donate to our emergency fund. But thanks so much for tuning in today, guys, and have a wonderful weekend.